Ever catch yourself kind of zoning out when someone's speaking English?
Yeah.
Like you're nodding along, but inside you're like, wait, what?
Oh, yeah. I've been there.
It's that whole thing of wanting to follow along, but your brain's still catching up.
Totally.
So today we're doing a deep dive on how to actually get better at listening. Not just hearing words, but really understanding.
It's huge. Yeah.
And we've got a great source for this. Podcast, Listen and Learn English, created by our expert today, Diana. Welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm host speaker.
Hi, everyone.
So excited to have you, Diana.
Thanks for having me.
Your podcast is all about how listening is the core skill. Like it impacts speaking, understanding, even writing. Why is that?
It's the foundation. Like, think of learning to dance, right? At first, you're all over the place, but the more you listen to the music,
As you start to get it?
you anticipate the beat, your body just knows what to do. Language is the same. The more you listen, the more natural it gets.
That's such a good analogy.
Oh.
And you also talk about starting with material that matches your level. Why is that so important?
Oh, I've made that mistake. Early on, I thought, I'll watch movies without subtitles, no problem.
Bold move.
Disaster. I was so lost, I just felt discouraged. It's got to be challenging, but not overwhelming.
So how do you find that sweet spot?
Well, comfort's part of it, but you want to be pushing yourself a bit too. A good rule is you should understand maybe 70–80% of what you're hearing.
Okay, so not every word, but enough to follow along.
Exactly. If you're constantly confused, dial it back a notch. But if it's too easy, you're not learning as much.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
What about subtitles? Help or crutch?
They're like training wheels. Get you going, but eventually gotta come off.
Right.
Start with them on, then gradually wean yourself off. Watch with, then rewatch without.
I bet transcripts are good too, especially for podcasts.
Yeah.
You do that for yours. Podcast, Listen and Learn English with Diana, right?
Yeah, they're super helpful. No visuals to help you out, so you can read along as you listen, then try it without.
Nice. Now, for those new to podcasts, what makes them such good listening practice?
It's all audio. No distractions. You have to focus on the words, how they're said. Plus, they're so convenient you can listen anywhere, anytime.
Yeah, like multitasking while learning.
Exactly. If you're looking for a good one to start with, just search Podcast Listen and Learn English with Diana.
Subtle plug. But seriously, it's about finding those moments to fit listening in. But Diana, it's not just about the words, right? You talk a lot about pronunciation and intonation. Why is that so key?
They carry so much meaning. Intonation can totally change a sentence. Like, you did a great job, said genuinely versus sarcastically.
Yeah.
Same words, totally different message.
Mind blown. I think a lot of us, myself included, we focus on grammar, vocabulary.
The building blocks?
Yeah. But we miss those subtle things native speakers do naturally. How do we train our ears for that?
Active listening. Pay attention to how they stress syllables, how their voice goes up and down. Mimic them. It might feel silly, but it helps.
Like you're shadowing them.
Exactly.
And don't be afraid to ask them to slow down or repeat.
Absolutely. Communication is a two-way street.
Love that. Before we go on, if you're digging this deep dive, hit subscribe, share with a friend learning English. Help us spread the word. Now, Diana, you've got this technique called shadowing. Tell us more.
It's super fun and effective for pronunciation and fluency. You listen to a clip, like from a podcast, movie, whatever, then you repeat it.
So you're trying to sound just like them.
Exactly. Match their pronunciation, intonation, everything. It makes you process the language deeper because you're not just listening, you're doing.
It's like a workout for your mouth.
Yeah.
And you also emphasize listening to different accents. Why is that important?
The world's full of accents. If you only hear one type of English, you'll be thrown off when you encounter others.
It's like only listening to one genre of music.
Right. It's limiting. Plus, it's so cool to hear how one language can sound so different.
So how do we start incorporating different accents?
Podcasts, videos with speakers from different places. There are even channels specifically about accents. Or movies, TV shows with subtitles in a different accent.
Great tips.
Yeah.
Now, we've talked about pushing ourselves, but sometimes you hit rewind and just feel defeated. How do we handle that frustration?
Be kind to yourself. Everyone has those moments of feeling stuck. It's about reframing those as learning opportunities.
I love that, reframing it.
Yeah, language learning is a journey, not a race.
And even native speakers ask each other to repeat sometimes.
All the time. So pause, rewind, process. You're not alone.
Such a good reminder. For those listening, drop a comment about your rewind moments. We're in this together. But Diana, we've got all these tips, but how do we actually make listening a habit?
Make it part of your routine, like brushing your teeth. Start small, maybe 10–15 minutes a day.
That's where a show like yours comes in. Podcast, Listen, and Learn English with Diana. Bite-sized episodes, easy to fit in. Okay, so we're setting those small goals, but what about the long game? How important is patience in language learning, especially listening?
It's essential. Language learning's a marathon, not a sprint. You won't be fluent overnight. There'll be ups and downs. Just keep going.
Celebrate those small wins along the way.
Absolutely, like finally understanding a whole conversation without subtitles. That's huge.
And the more you listen, the more those wins happen.
Exactly.
So, listeners, what's one small win you've had lately? Tell us in the comments. Now, Diana, before we wrap up this part of the deep dive, I want to touch on one last tip. Using headphones. What's the magic there?
They're like a secret weapon. They create this immersive experience, block out distractions so you can focus on the sounds. It's like having your own personal tutor right in your ears.
I love that. So it's not just about blocking noise, it's about focus. And something that struck me in your podcast Listen and Learn English with Diana, was that being a good listener makes us better communicators overall. How did that work?
It seems counterintuitive, but listening is the foundation of good communication. When you listen well, you're not just taking in info, you're building empathy, understanding, showing the other person you value what they're saying.
Creates a better dynamic, right?
Totally. Think about talking to someone who's not really listening, just waiting to talk, interrupting.
Ugh, yeah, the worst.
Makes you feel unheard. But when someone really listens, it feels amazing. You feel seen, understood. That builds trust, makes communication easier.
So it's beyond just English, it's about understanding people.
Exactly. And as you get better at listening in English, those skills transfer to any language. You'll pick up on nonverbal cues, be more patient, empathetic.
Like a superpower. We get so caught up in grammar, pronunciation, we forget the human side of it.
It's easy to get lost in the technical stuff, but language is about connection, sharing ideas, building relationships, expressing ourselves.
So how do we become more active listeners in English? Any practical steps?
First, be present. Put the phone away, quiet your inner critic, focus on the speaker. Don't plan your response while they're talking.
We in the moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
And ask clarifying questions. If you don't get something or want to make sure you understand, just ask. It shows you're interested, making an effort.
And it's a chance to practice our English, too.
Exactly. Win-win. Also, pay attention to nonverbal cues, body language, eye contact, crossed arms, fidgeting. It all gives you clues.
It's like learning a whole other language, the unspoken one.
Right. It takes practice, but you'll start understanding those unspoken messages, which makes you a better communicator all around.
For our listeners, when was a time you felt truly listened to? Tell us in the comments. Now, Diana, as we wrap up this part, what's one key takeaway about listening and communication?
Listening isn't just about hearing words. It's about understanding people. When you listen well, you open yourself to connection, empathy, understanding. And that makes you a better communicator, no matter the language.
Powerful stuff. It reminds us that language learning isn't just about rules and words, it's about connecting with others.
Exactly.
If you're enjoying this, hit that like button and subscribe for more. We'll be back in a bit with the final part, where we'll explore some advanced listening techniques to take your skills to the next level. Stay tuned. And we're back for the final part of our listening deep dive. We've covered the basics, the people side of it, and now, Diana, it's time for some advanced techniques. Like, how do we level up our listening game?
I love that analogy, like in a video game, taking on new challenges, getting those skills sharper.
So what kind of challenges are we talking about? What can help us become even better listeners in English?
Well, one technique I really like is dictogloss. Super helpful for training your ear for detail, and it boosts your grammar too.
Dictogloss. Okay, I'm intrigued. Break it down for us.
So imagine you're listening to a short piece, like a paragraph or two, but it's a bit faster than normal speed.
Okay, gotta focus.
You try to jot down as many keywords, phrases as you can. Don't sweat getting every word, just the main ideas.
So it's like note-taking on steroids, but for listening.
Exactly. Then you get with a partner or a group and use those bits you wrote down to reconstruct the whole passage.
Oh, interesting.
It makes you think hard about grammar, word order, how the ideas connect.
That's a language puzzle.
Yeah. And it trains you to pick out those key bits of information, which is useful for anything, lectures, podcasts, even just conversations.
Makes sense. Now, what about understanding what's not said directly? Like the tone, body language, reading between the lines.
That's huge. It's listening between the lines, paying attention to those subtle things that go beyond just the words.
I think that's where a lot of learners get tripped up. We're so focused on the words themselves, we miss those little hints that change the meaning.
It's true. It takes practice to pick up on those. Start with the speaker's tone. Warm, cold, sarcastic, sincere, it all makes a difference.
Right, like, that's great can mean the opposite depending on how you say it.
Exactly. Then look at body language. Eye contact, crossed arms, are they nervous? All clues.
We're like language detectives.
Love it. And the more you do it, the more you'll just understand those unspoken parts, which makes you a way better communicator.
So cool. Now, before we wrap up this awesome deep dive, any last advice for listeners who want to take their English listening to the next level?
Embrace the challenge. Listen to things that are a bit hard for you now. A tough podcast, a lecture, even a debate.
Push ourselves out of that comfort zone.
Yeah, it's like a workout for your brain. Don't be scared to look up words, rewind, really think about what you're hearing.
That's all part of the learning. And it reminds us that language learning never really ends. Always something new to discover.
So true.
Diana, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for all your wisdom and tips.
It's been a pleasure. I hope everyone feels ready to level up their listening.
And for those looking for a great resource, check out Diana's podcast, Podcast Listen and Learn English with Diana.
Thanks for the shout out.
Well, of course. If you enjoyed this deep dive, give us a thumbs up, subscribe for more explorations of language and communication, and share this with your fellow English learners. Until next time, happy listening.